Welcome to the Happy Mindset Show, episode number 16. Today's episode is called A Journey Towards Inner Beauty. And today I'm joined by Shirley Liu. Shirley is an international marketing executive with over 12 years of strategic brand experience in companies such as L'Oreal, Estée Lauder in France, UK, and Asia Pacific region. Today I'm interviewing her because she also went on her own personal hero's journey. And now she devotes a lot of time to inspiring millennials and helping them to get in touch with their own goals in life and their personal journey and how to navigate the world with that understanding. So thanks for joining us today, Shirley.
Thank you very much for having me, Dennis. It's a pleasure to be here. And first of all, I just want to, before we even start, I just wanted to congratulate you and give your happiness mindset a shout out and a huge support. I know that you also in corporate, but you've been spending the last year and a half kind of doing, cultivating this platform, which is all about, stimulating everyone to gain clarity and intention in everyone's personal learning journey. And I think that's incredibly significant and meaningful project to do. And the fact that you're doing it in your personal time in parallel to your corporate job, I think it's brilliant. And like we were discussing earlier, courage and inspires courage. And I think your story and your example really needs to be, I would love for everyone to see it and to know that we're all doing this at a personal level, which is identifying things and values that we can give back to society, to the others around us at our own individual level. Luckily, media is quite democratized right now, so it's wonderful you've set up a website, you're doing YouTube, you're doing podcasts, and just starting off, but it's a wonderful way to do it, and everyone can do it in their own way. So I think congratulations to you. I'm very inspired by your example.
Thanks for that, Shirley. So yeah, I just wanted to bring it back to you again, I guess. Where did it all begin for you? So what was your dream when you were growing up in, you grew up in Thailand, I think, originally, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I have, I'm Taiwanese, and my parents are Taiwanese. I was born in Taiwan, and I left Taiwan when I was 6 because of my father's business, and I grew up in Thailand, where I went to American school. And then, I went to the UK to study. I started a career there. I became a citizen. I had my first property there. I had a life there. And then destiny calls, and I sort of caught a curveball in life and took on an opportunity for work and came to France in 2011. So that was sort of my my journey, and during my time as a young teenager in Thailand, I still remember quite clearly, at 16, I had identified to say, oh, I really wanted to, I'm passionate about cosmetics, and I really wanted to have a career in marketing management. And so being in the, a manager in a world-class cosmetics company became my very innocent kind of goal. And I sort of spent, the next 12 years working towards that with a lot of help, a lot of mentors, and obviously, gaining the right skill sets to get there professionally. The interesting thing was, because I guess now in hindsight, it's great to have a focus to work towards, but I obtained that goal at 28. And because I had been so single-minded about it, which is in a good sense is a self-discipline. But I think when I achieved it at 28, I was suddenly, a bit lost. And I thought, what? This is it? My goal for so long, so I obtained it. And why do I feel this sense of loss and emptiness? And what is left? One of the natural steps was, when I look at my good friends and colleagues was, once they achieve that, then the next part is settling down and, mortgage, kids and everything. And I thought, well, that's wonderful. But part of my personality just felt like there must be more. So I went into the next few years really starting to go into a state of, there must be more. And what is my purpose? What is my meaning? What is the meaning to all this? There must be more. I couldn't answer it in the short term because it was this huge topic that, many people in past histories tries to answer, and everyone had a different answer. So spend the next few years really educating myself, and also in existentialism. I went into philosophy, I went into literature, just trying to gain some insight from predecessors ahead of me who had, made a lot of paveway into thinking about what their meaning was. And it took me years to slowly, first of all, gain a bigger scope in my mind that there is, that life is bigger than macro and our daily kind of just work and etc. That there is a magnificent force that which is nature, which is something that's beyond human comprehension. And once my mind stretches to the universe and to different dimensions, the possibilities of knowledge that I know for sure that human mind cannot comprehend, but we have intuition and we know that it's bigger out there. When I started thinking about that, and then coming back to feel how tiny we all were in this grand scope of things, but still recognizing that there's a universal theme such as love, compassion, meaning, evolution, all in there. And so it really changed the scope and context of where I looked at things. Also from a personal level, I tried many different ways to try to define my meaning and purpose of my life. And in the end, I came up with 2 torture tests that I think really helped me. And this is, two sort of formulas that I've kind of organized that I teach the young professionals that I mentor today. The 2 things are torture tests were on our tombstone, if we could use one word to describe our life, or what would be the one word that our friends and families write on our tombstone that we would be really happy and proud of, but just one word. I know there is other, kind of methods with a eulogy, but with a eulogy you can fit loads in, but with just one word, and really it's a torture test. I went through like a couple of years thinking about, oh, would it be successful? Would it be, funny? Would it be rich? Would it be whatever? And I just put loads of words on and kind of listened to my gut instinct and how I reacted with that. Nothing really clicked until I came across the word inspirational. And I think, oh my God, that's a huge word to live towards. But if I could have that as my true north for my life, the purpose and intention of my life, I would be very proud and I would be very happy. And I think, this would be a very worthwhile word to live towards. And I do want to live towards that for my life. And then I had to then also define to say, how can I be, inspirational? There's many ways to deliver the word inspirational. What was my own KPI and my own offerings and value added? And I think in the end, it's really about, I sort of quantify it as the number of people's lives that I was able to touch and bring value and bring goodness to in my lifetime. And, whether that's at a micro level, whether that's, just one-on-one with the people I talk to, with people I mentor, and the people I interact with or work with, or one day if we're, lucky enough and successful enough to build a public platform where we can influence tens of thousands or millions at a macro level. People like Bill Gates, people like Oprah Winfrey, Anne Huffington, Sheryl Sandberg, also with her lean-in groups, and that would be very worthwhile. And if I think about these examples, they're really profiles who have all worked very hard in their primary careers, succeeded. They've also went through their own trials and hero's journey, and they delivered excellence in what they do. They maintain integrity to the point where they're successful, and they have a lot of resources, but and they still then apply themselves to this newfound public voice and platform to contribute themselves, championing themes that give service to the society that they're passionate about. And I think, at the end of our lives, I realized one thing that, and this is my second torture test, which is, in the end of our lives, if there's no bigger moment of truth than us versus us. Even if we're lucky enough to be surrounded by friends and family in those last breaths, in the end, in that moment, it's just us having an inner dialogue with ourselves and asking ourselves, did I live a good life? Did I love enough? Did I give enough? Was I proud of myself? And the moment I realized that, then I realized actually the person I need to really, the validation really comes from me all along. And so that was the moment that, when the validation shifted from a younger self, as females, we also, there's an element of culture where we're brought up we have to be good girls, and part of that means pleasing. And so therefore, unconsciously, our culture makes us place a lot of validation outside. But the moment I realized that, there's no bigger moment of truth than that one last moment, it's me against me, all that validation shifted right in. And I became my validator. I was able to quiet down all the external voices outside. And because of that, I brought myself space and freedom to then fend off me physically trying to, jump through those hoops, and come back to being centered and have the time and headspace to define my own core values, my own inner compass. Who do I want to be in the future, maybe 10, 15 years as a person, and who do I want to be as a leader in a corporate? Because there's also many different types of leadership, and what do I stand for? What are my convictions? And how do I build those core values that anchor me, whilst on a daily basis there will be things that challenge me? So I kind of went through that entire journey, and I'm not saying that it's an easy process, because I think the homework of looking inside us and challenging ourselves is always the most, it's very energy consuming. But I also think there's no greater reward than the process of digging inside us, gaining self-awareness, and defining and clarifying what we stand for, because it makes the whole life a lot more meaningful. It gives us a sense of direction and also serenity that comes with it, and self-confidence, because we're marching in our own at our own rhythm. And I think the success to anything really is self-awareness and the action of looking within.
So when did your introspection really start? Was it when you got that job at 28 and you realized I still feel kind of empty inside, or was it before that?
It was then. So I had joined Lauder, and I worked from the bottom. So even before I joined the cosmetics company. So while at 16, I knew that I wanted to go into cosmetics industry. That was my passion. But often in life, we have to take zigzags sometimes, because you have to be at the right place at the right time sometimes for opportunities to appear, and the only thing you can do is to prepare ourselves for when that comes. So I had wanted to build an international career, but at the time I didn't have a European citizenship. So it was really, kind of just a wild dream, wanting to build an international career, but one that I know so vividly in my head that I wanted to. And I remember when I first went to the UK, and I had never been to the UK before, but I literally just packed up my bags and I said, I'm going to the UK and I'm going to study. My parents were like, why? Why do you need to go so far? I'm like, I want to. So I've never been to the UK before. I just applied and I packed up my bags and I went. I remember on the flight, I was sitting someone next to an executive, I think probably, someone similar to a PNG caliber kind of thing. And he was very friendly and lovely. And he was just chatting and he said, oh, well, and then, how long's your course? Are you planning to come back? And I was like, yeah, I really want to build an international career. So I do want to try to, find opportunities to stretch myself in a new market. And he was like, oh, very encouraging. And he said, and what kind of companies are you looking at? You do have in mind? And I was like, well, Estee Lauder, P&G, etc. And he was very, very encouraging, but I could also, sense, and I think it's very normal reaction that it's, at a time when it was even difficult for home students to find a job in those kind of top caliber companies, what was the likelihood for someone without this kind of, paperwork to do that? And I remember that, and he was so friendly about it, and he was very empathetic about it. But I remember that, and so I sort of landed, and my master's was, from day one of the postgrad course, I knew I wanted to do it. So I started finding ways, and one of the formulas I always have is, and I share with my mentees, is never hold back into dreaming bold. After we know inside and can negotiate with ourselves to say, this is what I want to achieve, and it can be as bold as we can, then, perhaps that's point B of saying what we want to become and do. And then reflecting and looking at point A, which is where we currently are and what our current resources, skill sets, and everything is. Then working out the distance in between, the gap in between, and breaking it down into steps to say, what are my constraints for getting to point A to point B? And then, factualizing it. Perhaps it's financial resources, perhaps it's skill sets. It can be broken down, then tackle it one by one. So if it's financial resources, okay, maybe look for a loan or get some help. If it's skill sets, then look for the right courses or the right credentials, certification, anything to make your CV or whatever qualifications you need to make it more relevant and convincing. This formula has served me very well in everything that I do, which is dream big, figure out the point B, look at your point A, what your current status is, and break down and list down what are the constraints between point A and B, and then tackle each one, very pragmatically. And that's the way I've sort of then tackled a lot of things in my life. It gives such a sense of freedom and liberty. And I think a lot of the times people hold themselves back on their dreams because they are too intimidated by the idea. And in fact, if you break it down and be very logical and pragmatic about it and be willing to work for each step, it's really achievable. It really is. And the more you do it, the less intimidating it becomes.
Being honest with yourself and where you actually are to begin with in point A, I find that's the struggle for myself. It's like being honest that I'm actually here and I want to get there. Is that something other people struggle with, or?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely, because the part of realization that, the hard part is the emotion that comes with it. And I think the key to that is to counter that sense of lack mentality and to build and train strong emotional muscles to say, I can do it, I can face it, okay, and make it very factual. The strength that the person has to have inside has to be very important, and all of it can be trained. I didn't start, kind of having such a strong inner core, or knowing how to process all of these challenges from day one, I've learned, and I found that these muscles can be trained. There's three things I really champion that I've also learned through the journey, which is we all need to have self-esteem, self-love, and self-compassion. And while they all may sound the same, I break them down into they're very different. Self-esteem, I think, is the respect we have for ourselves. Self-love is the ability to be generous to ourselves. Self-compassion is the ability to forgive ourselves and to not self-bash. And I think, people can have high self-esteem and high self-love, but they can be very harsh on themselves. And oftentimes, I think, when we're coming back to your question, when we're looking at point A, and you feel this overwhelming kind of discouragement and loss and et cetera, a lot of that negative emotion comes from the third part, which is self-bashing. Because you feel terrible about yourself, that your current situation is this, that I'm not good enough, that I lack this resource, that I ended up, I don't have the right skill set, and you fall into a cycle of self-bashing. Then of course the energies are channeled in the wrong way. Instead of trying to do something productive and breaking it down and tackling one by one, you go into this swirl of self-bashing and self-doubt. So I think in these moments, monitoring our own emotions is very important, and being aware to say, okay, I'm going down this route, and then pulling up the muscle of self-compassion, which is then being able to moderate ourselves and self-coach inside and say, hey, have self-compassion, don't bash yourself. Let's see how we can do it, because most of the times, circumstances can be changed. I read one phrase in the book that I really resonated with, which is on self-compassion, saying that we all have that inner voice in our minds, which, give us doubts, etc. And it said that those voices that make us doubt ourselves are not the voice of our highest self speaking to ourselves. So therefore, it's important to just recognize when they come and be able to, lovingly and gently but assertively put it away in the drawer that you say, this doesn't serve me, therefore I'm going to change that. And a lot of our behaviors really come from what happens in our internal dialogue, in our headspace. So gaining and strengthening the muscles to know how we then moderate the frequency then in the dialogues that happen in our headspace is extremely important to conditioning us to have the right foundations to be able to pursue our dreams and to moderate the quality of motivation and energy that we can source within ourselves. Because that's the one thing, we can't depend on one person or outside to give us that charge of energy and validation. It has to be sourced within. And when we gain that muscle where we're confident to say, it's inside me, I can moderate it, I can always generate that determination and courage, it's the biggest confidence kind of reassuring thing to know that whatever life throws at me or whatever that's coming in my way, I'm confident, I'm serene, because I know I have that skill set to moderate it and to resolve it. And it gets better and better with time, with age, with challenges that you're able to come over. And then one day you're able to teach it to other people.
Do you remember was there a specific kind of day or time when you started realizing that your internal state was different to the external circumstance? It didn't depend on the external circumstance, that they were separate?
I think it was, yes, I can, in hindsight, I can identify it. It was a combination of perhaps 6 years of, before when I started looking and thinking about the meaning of life, the meaning of my purpose, etc. That took about 6 years of slow progress, because I was actually only becoming aware of these ideas and concepts and reading and kind of gaining that knowledge. So slowly and slowly, it kind of snowballed.
Mm.
And the peak of it, I think, was last year when I took a year of sabbatical from work. And I went to, I just took a year away from my corporate life, took distance, to really think about, at a turning point in my life, to say who I am now, because I had grown a lot also during my time in my life and also in corporate career. But when you're in a corporate, it's always quite busy. So as much as you want to try and think about many things, it's not as equal as you are able to really take distance and really get yourself off the radar, not be in touch with everyone, but being in your own company and having that dialogue with yourself and having a new community of people to learn with. And I enrolled in executive education, which was immensely stimulating. And to be honest, it was so interesting because having that space gained the quietness to grow spiritually.
Mm.
And being with a new cohort of stimulating professionals who all came back to school really because everyone was trying to look for some kind of answer in their lives at that crossing point. So in fact, we did learn a lot of technical skills, but the one that was the most meaningful learning from each other was our exchange of life stories and our dilemmas and our trying to find our next definition and our core values. And so the two put together, the growth in spirituality and the intellectual stimulation and life experience changing, plus getting away from my normal life cycle, taking distance and time for myself, plus all those those muscles and knowledge that I had, really put in bit by bit, week by week, year by year in those 6 years of trying to find myself, trying to expand my mind with the universe, with philosophy, with psychology. All of that clicked together in the last year. And I had immense transformation, I think, in the last year, because I don't think these kind of awareness and transformation really happens overnight. Sometimes it does happen. I have seen examples of people who gain that level of immense maturity and awareness and perspective, but that comes with a major life trauma. Those are very painful, and I don't wish anyone go through it. I'm very lucky not have to go through it. And I think most of the population hopefully don't go through that. But growth comes from an evolution, and usually wisdom comes from pain. And I think when we're lucky enough not to have those kind of major life traumas that transforms us, it's still really worth it to start looking within and knowing that there is all the worth to be spreading that kind of intensity over years. Because I'm really glad that I went through all that exercise and now having gained a certain level of awareness of myself. And I think it's a lifelong journey. It doesn't really end and right until the last breath. But I'm glad to have gained a certain level of awareness at my 30s, and to have the next 50 years of my life to continue that growth and living my life in purpose, and therefore bigger joy and quality, and knowing what I want, how I want to build my life, who are the tribes and people that I want to build around me, etc. Because essentially that is our responsibility. Our life is a accumulation. Our life is the result of a string of choices that we make on a daily basis, whether it's big or small. We're really accountable for the kind of life that we present to ourselves. It's no one's making those choices but us.
So you mentioned community there. When did you start realizing that you were the one determining a lot of the people that were in your environment? Because you can easily get into the mindset of a prisoner, that I'm around people that I don't really want to be around, or I'm stuck here, it's not my choice. But when did you start realizing it is kind of your choice?
somewhere along the journey, probably if I were to define all this in 7 years, probably in year 4, 5, yeah. And I think, I think all of us when we were younger, we all go through the period maybe in our teens or, as a young adult, feeling like we've all had the experience of saying, oh, I must force myself to go to this networking event or this party because I need to build my network or whatever. And the thing is, you kind of really go and you don't enjoy it and you feel exhausted, your energy strained, but you still continue that cycle because you think or you hear that is the right thing to do. I think then I went into that exercise, and the more I started to look inside and to define what I resonate with and I didn't. And with those values then brought me to the kind of people that had similar values, and it became my tribe, and saying, oh, these are the people I kind of we stimulate each other and we gain positive energy from. And these are the kind of people that, our values are not on the same frequency, and therefore I sense that my energy level is draining. And to be honest, there's no right or wrong in people's personalities and choices, etc., and values. It's just a matter of whether you're on the same wavelength, and it's nothing personal, but you have to curate the tribe around you. So I think when I was looking inside, getting to know myself a little bit better and defining what inspired me, I want to learn from, or the cohort that was on the same frequency, I was then able to make much guiltless choices to say, well, I'm not going to spend my, I'm going to prioritize my time like this, or I want to be around this community because I gain growth, etc. here. And to feel we're still really respectful, not guilty about it. And the joy then, maximizes when I was able to be assertive, and that's the part of self-love. That's my second part, where I kind of grew in that sense, and saying, well, I'm going to not put myself through experiences or parties or cocktails that I don't want to, because it drains my energy. So now I've been quite, quite blessed to say I really have a tribe, cohort around me who I know really grows me and stimulates me and supports each other in the right way, and it's bringing me towards evolving towards the direction that I want to evolve in, to become this person that I want to become, of this leader, of this person, or this individual. But first, in order to curate this community, I had to be super clear about what I stand for, what was important to me. So again, it comes back to self awareness. I also learned one thing in the last few years, which is I started monitoring my own feelings a lot. And this is what, young professionals, they ask me very often to say, well, how do you know? How do you know? How do you do all this? And I said, well, I don't really know. And sometimes you think you know yourself, you don't. But your intuition knows better than logic. And the key is then to build this habit of monitoring our own feelings at all times. That is, what are the circumstances, people, topics, whatever, that elevates my energy. And I always think people are a spectrum. Human beings and psychology is so complex that we're all made up of a spectrum of brightest brights and the darkest darks. Situation and people will trigger and bring out the brightest in us or the darkest in us. And I think all of us, we, at least me in this journey, I make a decision to say, well, I really like the version of me that is in my highest vibration, that is in my noble, sense, and I'm able to serve, etc. And I want to live my life in the brightest brights, because the joy and the quality of life, and also my mental space and my inner sense of beauty is just so much better and fulfilling and enriching. Therefore, I always want to stay in that sense. So I started, monitoring my feelings to say, do people, circumstances, jobs, topics, does it make me feel like I'm in my higher vibration or lower vibration? And because I want to become a higher vibration version of me, then I start making choices and filtering out all the things and people and circumstances that brings out the lower vibration in me or the darker sides of me. So I was able to shift that, the conditioning in the physical world, through conscious choices. But I think what's very important, I wish I learned earlier, was the ability to really monitor how I felt. Just listening to my gut, and my intuition, and just, very simply, and not even judging to say, is this right or wrong? Just purely saying, do I feel good about this? Is this lifting me up in my vibration, or is it pulling me down in my vibration? Two simple questions, put them in different jars, and then you put yourself more and maximize the one that gets you into your brightest brights, and minimize the other one in a very diplomatic way, in a very constructive way, and the life changes. And I know that because I had conditioning my environment like this, that I will be able to remain in my higher vibration more of the time. And the more, it's not going to change overnight, but the more that I am in that state of mind, the more it becomes me and my identity over the years. And once I started being aware of myself, I started having increased sensitivity of people's energy too, because it's really interesting. I think, everything in the world is made up of vibrations. So whether it's plants, it's, atoms, it's human cells. If you put any cell under a microscope, you'll see that it trembles and it vibrates very, slightly, and we're all made up of millions of that. We all give out vibrations and energy, that is very, you can't pretend. It's a very raw sense of energy, and our intuition really picks that up before our logic does. And it goes beyond any superficial kind of titles, appearance, everything. So trust that energy. Start to identify that, to say, does this person have good energy? Do I feel the purity in their soul, in their intentions, in their personality? Do they have a beautiful soul? Or I feel like, I'm not sure about this energy because there's some kind of darkness here, or it's a little bit murky. And you don't have to explain to yourself fully. It's, you don't have to understand why this energy is murky. You don't. You just simply say, well, I sense it, then I'm not gonna, because just some part of your intuition already knows that something or value, either value personality wise, it's not aligned.
That's important that you said there, because it's easy to start overthinking stuff, whereas I think this is more just a feeling. You get a sense, and sometimes you might actually feel like you made a wrong decision, but in hindsight you'll see, oh, maybe I actually did make the right decision there.
No, don't second guess yourself, because I think the trap with overanalyzing is you start the social kind of norms and all those things that you were conditioned to know then starts to seep in, and you will second doubt yourself. But the intuition is very raw. So always go with that, and don't try to, burden yourself with trying to explain why. Trust it, because our intuition is our best guidance system, is our best sat nav. We just have to honor it, respect it, and get to know it well enough to know that how we process the information that it gives us in a human life, physical way, and make the best out of that. And if I listen to all the inspirational leaders who have had a really successful life and authentic, they all say that they follow their intuition. but in a very constructive way. So I'm not saying, you know, we should follow our intuition and just give in to all of our desires, etc. But I think it's finding the right balance and building the right muscles to say, here's my intuition, how am I going to deal with it, you know, manage it and use it in a way that brings me towards where I want to be, best version of myself, fulfilling my purpose, becoming the person I want to be. And it becomes incredibly valuable resource.
Would it come back to getting clear on your values, your core values, and your priorities before you can really start leveraging the intuition? I get, or is like using your intuition a bit more?
No, I think coming into, I think the first step is still working out the core values first, and then intuition then becomes a filtering system to say whether whatever that's coming your way that life brings you, is it aligned with this and that? Because, you know, sometimes we can't, the surface is not what it seems, and then we use our intuition to assess, to say yes or no. But I think the core kind of getting to know ourselves is really work. And sometimes we think we know ourselves, but we don't really know until we're in that situation. And I usually recommend young professionals various methods to try to do that, because you can't do it all on your own. There's only so far about listening to yourself that can bring you, because you also need external stimulations and information to compare them, bench against that. So three things actually I recommend a lot of young professionals is, one, you know, when they're still in university, access the alumni or career center or alumni services. Usually they will have career coaches who are very trained to have these dialogues and know which are the right questions to pose, and so they will guide you and stimulate a lot of that thinking. They will also have an entire database of surveys that are normally really expensive for corporates, but for universities they'll they have the resources to cover that for free for the alumni and students. And there's surveys after surveys of computer algorithms and really intricate kind of questionnaires that look at your psychology and profile your strengths and weaknesses in a scientific way. So when I go through that, even now, if I can, if I have access to any of that, I do it. And because there's always such a sense of awe and pleasant shock to see your profile, your personality being analyzed in paper, black and white in front of you, very theoretically. And you're like, oh my God, so this is who I am and excited. And then there's a level of acceptance or just awareness and accepting that to say, this is me, this is my trigger. So one of the things through this that I found in myself was that power was incredibly important to me, that it was a psychological motivator. And I was shocked because, in our culture or in the general sense, power is always quite negatively kind of labeled. So this survey kind of told me that my power was one of the top 3 triggers, what was important to me, that I'm driven by that. But then it analyzes in detail to say that there's power for self, and then there's another kind of power for public, which is more for service. And gladly, I sort of fell into that pile. So that exercise gave me 2 values. One, that I was able to accept, okay, so power is a part of my trigger or my motivation. Therefore, I'm going to honor that. I'm going to respect that. And I'm going to embrace that in everything that I look for. Because then that means in my job choices, the desire to impact, I have to honor that in order to be happy. The second thing was I found reassurance to say that, oh, now I understand why I'm always, I desire impact. I look for impact. I look for opportunities to serve and to to join communities where we can make movements together. It's because this was a part of me that is, the power to impact and influence, but to serve. So I sort of went through, and I would, I recommend that exercise, which is free. Any educational institutions, they'll have some kind of resources like this. Use those as much as you can throughout your career, because no matter how many years we graduate, we can always tap into that resource and they will always be welcoming. Second thing is to have mentors. All of the questions that everyone has most of the time, your mentors who are 10, 15, 30 years older than you are, who has been through the journey and just simply life experiences more, you can figure out answers, or they'll share they'll share their stories, their glory and success, failures, or they're able to answer your questions and stimulate you in the right way. And that just saves a lot of time. I wish I had known that much earlier, and that's what I share with young professionals now is don't be afraid to reach out and to tap into, mentors who are successful in their careers, in their life, and just ask for help and say, I want to learn. And when you do it in a very sincere way, everyone wants to give. But the key is, though, to reach out and learn from the people who are aligned with your core values. Again, it comes back to that. You have to then, who you aspire to, and then you reach out to those profiles and you learn from them. Because when you don't work out that first, and you just reach out randomly to people, especially when you're based on superficial kind of appearances, it's very dangerous, because you could be receiving information that leads you on the wrong path and leads you further away from the best version of yourself. So identifying that first, and then reaching out to people, and judge people by their personality, by their values, by what's inside, by their inner beauty. That's going to take you in the right direction.
That makes sense. I know from talking to people that I get the impression that the white noise of the internet is a big problem. We're not able to filter things out. I think if we're clear on our core values and what we're looking for from life, it automatically starts filtering and sorting the stuff out for us, because we've got that guiding question for where we're going.
Yeah. Yeah. And nowadays, especially with our day and age, there's so much information and opinions and true and not true floating out there, and I think we can never return back to the society or the era and age where it was information was more simple. The best vaccine against that is really to build that core inside, and to trust ourselves in navigating and filtering out the information for us. So, but you can't really you don't know what to filter out when you don't know what to look for. So knowing ourselves and building that core inside is the first step to anything.
Makes sense. So like you do motivational speaking. So did you ever have a fear of public speaking? Because I know it's like the number one fear people have.
Yeah. Now I don't. Essentially, I just want to serve. And I believe in transmitting that knowledge back to the younger generation so that they're better than us. And, this is what I always say. I say, in the baby boomers and our parents' generation, there's the midlife crisis. That's at 45, 50. And the young millennials, they have quarter life crisis. So what that tells me is, the younger generation, they're so intuitive and so smart. They're asking the right questions very early on. But the problem is, I don't think they have the benefit of hindsight and life experience to be answering that profound question of what is the purpose of my life at 25. And the value of us in our 30s and 40s, 50s, 60s is just to, be able to give time to them and strategically share our stories, all of our glories and failures. And all of us easily have 10, 15 years of where we kind of went the wrong way, to share to them. And the thing is, the key is not to project our dreams or regrets on them, but simply just in a very authentic way to say, here are the information I didn't have when I was your age trying to build a career. But these are my full package, all the ugly and the good, and my successes and my failures. Here it is. Along the way, a few formulas that I kind of, worked out to say this is the fastest shortcut. I give them to you, and I hope you make better choices than we do. Because as a generation, we want you to succeed faster than us. We want you to achieve more joy in life than us. Is it possible to have successful career and a meaningful life and material wealth and, a great passion? Yes, it is possible. But the thing is, the alignment has to be made early on in life, between around 20 to 27, when you graduate from your education and perhaps you're a young professional having a couple of years of work experience. 20 to 27-ish, you can still change the foundation of your life and try to find that alignment. The more your purpose, your passion, and your meaning is more aligned, and your career is more aligned, the happier you'll be in life. Because what is the thing about midlife crisis? Midlife crisis is you're climbing a ladder and you climb till the end just to realize that the ladder was on the wrong wall, that it should have been on the other wall, but it's too late to do anything. Then because of that helplessness of changing the status quo and to undo the life to start over, then they fall into this kind of moment of crisis and saying, etc. So I think our mission and our value as is the generation in our 30s is to really be giving back and sparing some time to the 20s and making sure that they are more successful than us as a generation, just like how we are more successful than our parents as a generation. And the same thing, they have to give and pay it forward as well. And I think when that becomes then my conviction and my reason for, like you, volunteering my personal time to be championing these messages, I then realized that it's not about me, that giving these talks or spending time to be giving fuel and to spreading these kind of messages. I'm just simply a channel that is trying to channel this greater force of truth, which has always been prevalent and is universal, is meaning, is love, is compassion. Ultimately, I think the conversation, it's about us having a dialogue and posing the right questions to the audience, and the echo that we're able to stimulate in their hearts and to say, yes, I never thought about that before. Oh my God, that's really profound. Have I been self-compassionate enough? Have I really worked enough to get to know myself? Have I honored my feelings enough? From the beginning till the end of any talks that we do, it's about the individual. We're just there facilitating that echo, facilitating as a human mirror, because we've, fell enough times that we know what are the right questions to ask to stimulate and ferment and initiate that kind of, thinking. So in fact, it becomes a very personal experience to the person.
Well, I suppose, what's the biggest issue millennials are facing today that you've seen?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I love that question. I think the millennials are very stereotyped by the world. And, I'm a huge advocate and huge fan of millennials. As you know, they're starting to come into the corporate and workforce, and I learn a lot from them. And I've also transformed with them. I think they're the most intelligent generation by far, most intuitive, most authentic, and most purpose-driven generation. And but I think their challenge is trying to gain understanding and appreciation by a very different generation who are probably the generation of the baby boomers above us, who, they came, and standing in the middle, I can resonate with both sides, and I have compassion and empathy for both sides, because baby boomers came from a world and time where you do have to, it takes grit, and it takes that level of proving yourself and doing apprenticeship and etc. for years, and pursuing a very linear life in order to obtain, material comfort. We can't really judge or blame them that they don't get, the younger ones, and think they're too pampered, etc. We have to have compassion with them, because that was their life experience, and they did earn it the hard way. And they're a product of that generation at that time and age. And you know what, they have their own challenges too. Their baby boomers are being labeled in a way that is very misunderstood, as much as the millennials. And these are the two generations across who both have their values and talents and etc. But I think are, especially the baby boomers are applying their own personal experience and standards on a world that is already changing. And I think the key is then to have, come back with a very open mind, and for them to appreciate and see the preciousness of millennials and what they give, because they're a fantastic generation. I think our role in that is to be the bridge in that, to facilitate that conversation and that appreciation, and to exchange, to say, well, to say to the millennials that the baby boomers also have their own challenges, and practicing compassion and standing in their shoes, etc., is also important, and knowing where to leverage their value. Because if millennials really want to find good mentors, obviously they can search within the 30s, but these baby boomers have immense wealth in their life experience to give to them. And usually within a corporate environment, there's a difference between mentors and sponsors. Mentors will guide you and give you the emotional support that you need, but sponsors are people who go a step beyond, and because they work their way up to decision makers in organizations. So sponsors are people who believe in you, are willing to put their credibility on the line to vouch for you and to make a difference in your career, to propel you, to give you a chance to bet on you. And having, so missing out on the baby boomers, to, leaders with the right value that they aspire to become, is missing out a huge part of life resources. So I think both sides, it's a very interesting time. But personally, one of the reasons that I feel so optimistic about the future is millennials. I think I am always so impressed when I talk to them, and even in the Parkland, the teenagers and school kids who stand out, and to be starting a movement on their own, their organization, their articulation, their courage, their intelligence, it blew me away, and I think a lot of people away, and they inspire us. And like I say, courage inspires courage. When we see people like that, and when we see courage, it doesn't matter what age it is, courage is courage. When people see courage, it draws out the courage in each of us, and we just want to do good. And they're a generation that has a very good foundation intellectually. They're the most educated, they're the most intuitive, they're the most authentic, most purpose-driven. And they're really passionate. They're really driven by their passion. Once they believe in something, they go. So, this generation has so much to succeed, and this generation will lead our future. The world that we will live in when we become older is in their hands. I'm so optimistic that it's them that's leading our world, and therefore I feel even more purpose to say we need to arm them with all the knowledge and resources that they need, so that they can be the best generation yet. And they will do the same to the generation after us. And that's the duty of educated global citizens, and it's a choice that we can all make, and each of us have plenty of resources and experiences to give to them. We just need to be aware, oh, we can bring value, and that they would want to listen to us and champion it in our own way.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, hearing both sides and then leveraging the benefits from the perspectives of both sides, I guess. That's
Yeah.
cool. So on your journey, was there any book that stands out in your mind that was like a really insightful book or that stood out for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think the one book that really changed, that was so influential to me, was John Steinbeck's East of Eden.
East of Eden. What's that
Yeah,
about?
one. I printed it out for you.
Okay. What does that talk about?
Well, John Steinbeck is a really well-known American author who won the Nobel Prize, and East of Eden is one of his, major works. And chapter 24 in this book is something that that changed me, my thinking, and my life, because there was one word inside in chapter 24, which is called timshel. This is my favorite word.
Timshel.
Yes, it's in Hebrew. And essentially, the whole story is talking about humanity, existentialism, through a story that takes place in the West. And in chapter 24, Lee, this cook, makes this revelation. Oh, timshel. Timshel means thou mayest, and that means human. Because there's a difference between you should, you could, but timshel means thou mayest, and that means as human beings we have complete liberty to choose in our free will, to say, are we going to choose in our highest, best, noble version of ourselves, or are we going to choose in our little human minds? And it's a choice and a free will. So when I say, I now, having really read into a lot of things and gained into things, I do believe that there is a greater force. So I'm not religious, but I am spiritual. I don't think I will ever understand, to what extent that magnificent force is. But I do feel like a lot of things, like nature, it's an intricate clockwork that is fully orchestrated to a delicate sense that is beyond explanation. And so there's many things in our life that, that we live within the clockwork and the orchestration of this magnificent force, like nature. Many things that we can't control. So I do feel a sense of surrender to that in the past couple of years, having understood that. With that surrender comes, I start to understand, the kind of joy and surrender when people talk about in various religions. And with that, you experience serenity and joyful anticipation. However, within that bigger context, there is a level of free will at human level. And that is the choice whether the universe or the magnificent force, or the external world, will not interfere with us. It's purely our own decision. That's the free will. It means we're in this context, okay, the world happens, life happens, but how we deal with it, how we respond to the world and life is purely our free will. We can respond to the same thing in a very wise, spiritual, compassionate way, loving way, and therefore it's always a very noble reaction and embracing and of appreciative of the human spirit. Or it can be more of the small human mind, which often comes with the emotions of humans at a mundane level, which is insecurity, jealousy, anger, etc. And the choices between that really is on us. The nature is not going to interfere with that. So timshel is the word that really struck me to say, God, we have free will. We have a choice in all that we do. And I desire to make all of my choices in the noblest form possible, and in my highest vibration possible. And that is my choice. And that is the way I want to live my life. And so that really is the underlying thing that, that became a part of my core values. And it determines everything that I do. Is I think about it to say, how am I going to react to it? Am I going to give into my human, emotions at a small level, or am I going to elevate and try to react in my noblest version possible? It's not always easy, because sometimes emotions kicks in. So it's a conscious decision, and it's this form of self-discipline. But the reward of liking oneself a lot more and is immense afterwards. And also because you're reacting to the world in that way, in a loving, compassionate, or a high vibration way. It's wonderful when you feel the world coming back in waves, giving you the same thing, also love, and also purity, and also good intentions, etc. And then we go through that cycle or a period of time, then it's really easy to say that is so rewarding, and that's the kind of life I want to build. So this is the book that really was extremely important to me, and I recommend it to people who are who are in the process of finding themselves and trying to find their core values.
So were they the kind of practical steps you took when you were kind of feeling lost and you were looking at the bigger picture questions of life that are oftentimes not answerable,
I read a lot. I try to reach out for existing resources on books, and there's immense resources on these. You just have to, discipline yourself to time on this. Taking those surveys and questionnaires and digging inside, reaching out to mentors and talking to people who can stimulate your thinking process on this. And the funny thing is that, just do these 3 things, it will snowball. Because one topic will lead you to the other. You'll become curious about learning more about this, and you learning about that. So the process, I was a simple question of what is, there must be more than this. It led me to a full 7 year of, then I started digging into psychology, because one of the books led me to there, and, psychology, economics, and the politics and people and the world, and they, in the end, you find out, they all tie in together. And then it makes you just at a whole level much more aware. But those 3 things are the same. The topics can change, but those questionnaires on many things. There are questionnaires about your strengths and weaknesses. There are questionnaires about what profession's best for you. There's questionnaires about different, human relationships, talking to people. Also, your audience could be different, and they could nourish you on different levels. And reading. And people are so aware about this now. I mean, 20 years before, it also existed, but it was a niche. Now it's a widespread phenomenon that people are looking for meaning and purpose in life and work. It's no longer a niche topic. It's a mainstream. So there is a plethora of resources available. I also listen to podcasts and interviews with people who I admire and who inspire me. Again, knowing, who I want to be and who inspires me, etc. So one of the podcasts that I listen a lot to is Oprah Winfrey, her Super Soul Sunday, and she's someone who's extremely admirable, because she also found her own definition, and then she dedicated her entire life in spreading and championing and trying to create awareness in everyone to live a more meaningful life. And I have to say, building it into our own daily routine is very important, because what I found is that doing little chunks of it every day and having some kind of stimulation and inspiration process is better than if you go on a retreat or a long weekend 1 week and you try to cram in all those books. It's much more efficient on a daily, because it's daily small baby steps of transformation from inside out. So last year, what was really interesting was, because last year in my sabbatical, I also had great opportunities to observe and to understood the importance of morning routines to very successful leaders and CEOs, and to say we all have 24 hours, but how do you cram in all those information and growth and etc. in your day? What was your secret? What I found is that, you know, everyone, and including the people that we read just in media today, they all have a morning routine. And they just craft it, and most of the time it involves in, you know, getting up early and doing cramming those routines in order to condition themselves into their best condition in the morning before they then head off to their work. And I have to say, I am not a morning person. I'm a night person. So it's really a chore. It's not easy for me to wake up in the morning. But when I then found value to say, when I do this morning ritual, I become a better version of myself, and therefore the value of this makes me want to get up early. So in the morning, I get up at 6 and I spend an hour reading the news with a cup of green tea, and it's just my moment. And usually it's still dark outside, and I'm on my massage chair and just, you know, going through the news, all the big titles, and just having them on apps, you know, like set titles and apps. You just remove the thought to say, well, what am I going to look at today? You just press the same 3 titles every day. You follow through the headlines and you just digest them that way. So by the end of the hour, I've had my quiet time. I know what's going on in the world. I'm kept up with everything, and I feel confident that I know what's happening out there. Then I go and get ready for work, and, you know, usually that's maybe like an hour or something, and I do it leisurely as well. I finish my cup of green tea, which is good for health. Then I put on, I listen to the French radio to enhance my language skills, and, you know, half an hour every day or 15 minutes on world news in French, which echoes what I had read in English earlier. Then I switched to podcasts and inspirational podcasts for half an hour, or a TED Talk or 2. And during that transformation, you know, those 2-3 hours of quiet time to myself, I become serene and solid because I know what's happening. Then the podcasts of inspirational leaders and conversations that stimulate me, I can literally feel my vibration being lifted to the highest form, to the place where, yes, I want to serve. Yes, I want to, you know, have free will, and I'm going to react and being in my highest, most brightest, most noble condition and state of mind, and I'm ready to go and face the world. And when I do that, I feel a difference. You know, because my mindset is conditioned in the highest vibration, I am much more compassionate to the world. I make better decisions as a leader, to the teams, to the people. I make decisions that's based on integrity and on my core values. Then the world responds that way. And by the end of the day, I feel wonderful and I feel fulfilled, and I feel like, yes, the day's not perfect, but majority, I really like myself because I was in my best version. On the days where I, you know, perhaps I was tired from business dinners the night before, and then so in the morning, I couldn't get up as early to do those morning routines. I don't have time to read the news between 6 to 7. I perhaps am rushing through getting ready, and, you know, I don't have time to listen to podcasts and really digest it in a good state of mind and conditioning my elevating steadily my vibration to my highest level. I'll just like rush through getting ready, and on the outside I will look exactly the same, you know, with makeup, hair, wardrobe, everything. But inside I was different. I would be different because I'm still me, but my vibration is mid or lower level of what I know I'm capable of. And it's just I'm a my mundane kind of human level brain. So then I go out and face the world, and you know what, the world happens, and every day, you know, the world doesn't change, but the way I react to it changes. So perhaps I'm a little bit more short-tempered. Perhaps I'm not as compassionate. Maybe I'm more judgmental to people or in situations. maybe then I give in to decisions that are easier and perhaps not, what I have conviction for, etc. And the world responds accordingly. And by the end of the day, again, the day's not perfect, but I, I do I really like myself that day? There's probably many things that that I can identify to say I didn't really like, that version of myself to make those choices, etc. The good thing is I found out that they're all the good and bad are good for 24 hours. Everything resets, our consciousness resets after a good sleep. So there's a chance to redo that in the morning, and restart the day. And I think the key is to listen to ourselves and to find what are the activities that we can put into a routine in the morning and just follow that to condition us into our best self in the morning so that we're ready to face the world. And I find that life is much more productive, much more high quality in that sense. And I cannot stress the importance of inner quality of life, our space of mind, the beauty of our souls and personalities, and its real work, its discipline, and its evolution. The investment in working on our inner beauty really has a direct impact to the quality and the joy and the meaning of our lives, the quality that we live.
Yeah, it's a lot in that. I suppose the morning routines, they do set you up for the day, and it's also okay with the days that you mightn't be perfect. What I got from that there is that you're striving for your best self.
Yes.
Okay with the fact that doesn't involve perfection. It doesn't look like perfection.
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's purely just striving for the best version of ourselves. If we're a spectrum, how do I always live the majority of the time that I can in my brightest brights? That's it. And I'm feeling joy for that. And the key is to find what works for you. Because, for example, so find what works for you and give you that, and monitor what puts you in that higher vibration. And that's it. Don't follow what the world says would put you in a higher vibration. Because, for example, for me, meditation doesn't work for me. I tried and I couldn't because my mind is buzzing, or for some reason it just didn't work for me. I don't feel it elevating me in my vibrations. However, listening to those podcasts, inspirational podcasts of, I find that, oh yes, when I listen to courage, it inspires my courage, and therefore I'm lifted. And stick with whatever activities that elevate your vibration. Go with that, and then group them all together and say, I need to. I think morning news is incredibly important, to have an opinion and to know how to help and how to serve the world. You have to know the context, and I know it's hard for a lot of people, and I had to find time to fit that in as well. But having that morning routine set and not having to think about it, make it become a routine. That chunk of time to yourself to think, to reflect, to condition yourself in your best version is so important. And I think it makes a huge difference the rest of the day. And our lives are made of days, really. So I cannot stress now I learned to understand. Before I would read articles to say, oh, this and that CEO or people in high power jobs, they get up at 5:30 and they do this and that. Why? I don't understand. Or that sounds great, but I can't find the self-discipline to do it. Well, it happens. The self-discipline happens when you find that the great value and the great joy it brings to life. Because and the transformation of inner beauty as well. I think, in terms of the quality of our soul, you just like that version of you so much more, and what your potential could be. And when you're conditioned that way, when you're in your best version, you're able to see the best in everyone else too. And you're able to then say, I embrace you in all of you, and I'm able to see your best potential, and I tell you about it, and then you feel so comfortable to be generous to uplift people, because you yourself are uplifted. You can't give other people what you don't have. And when you're uplifted, you're in your higher vibration, you're able to, even in your daily interactions, bring out the higher vibration in other people. And, you know, have time to do projects like this, to serve. And ultimately, I think that's the meaning of our existence, that we didn't, you know, I would be very happy to, that if someone, you know, even in our podcast, one person heard about it and feel something inside them, and they were able to gain from this, you and my time doing this podcast today would have been worth it. And the more we can do that, the more value our life has. Same thing, I think Bill Gates, you know, at the end of his life, he won't be thinking about how many, you know, computers and sales and revenue that Microsoft has done, even though it's a legendary company. I think he would be most proud and happy about how many lives the Bill Gates and Melinda Foundation was able to touch in people's worlds, and they're championing health, global health, and etc. So I think, you know, and that applies to a lot of people too. But first of all, it comes with awareness, self-knowledge, and doing inner work, and kind of trying to obtain a better state of inner mind, and then life changes.
Makes sense. That's good stuff. So for anybody listening, how, like, can somebody reach out to you? And
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. After every, you know, after the projects, usually, you know, people then reach out, they want to talk more, etc. And that's what we're here for. We're here for to offer that kind of dialogue, to guide them through it, quite unconditionally. So they can find me on LinkedIn. If they type in Shirley, Liu, L'Oreal, I'm there, and, you know, reach out, and we can always have a quick call. And I always make time for this, and I think this is one of the best ways to give back. Yeah, and to, you know, accompany them through their careers.
Cool. I can put the link in the notes as well if you want, of your LinkedIn profile, so they can click in there and
yeah, with pleasure.
Cool. Thanks for that, Shirley.
My pleasure.
So yeah, it was great talking to you today and learning more about your journey and the process, and how, I guess, universal this is too. So
absolutely.
Thanks a lot for your time.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you, Dennis, and congratulations again for doing the Happiness Mindset, this courageous platform, and I hope it grows. And, you know, is there anything that we can support on and help and, you know, refer to, don't hesitate. I think this is really a community of like-minded people wanting to give and serve and add value, and it's great.
Cool. Thanks again, Shirley. So until next time, have fun and enjoy the process.
Thank you.